Hello guys, I am back after 2 to 3 days break. Let's let's start this journey again. Chapter 10. Put a stop loss order on your ORIs. Put a stop loss ORIs on your sorry. Put a stop loss order on your ORIs. Would you like to know how to make money on stock exchange? Well, so would a million other people, and if I knew the answer, this book would sell for a fabulous price. However, there's one good idea that some successful operators use. This story was told to me by Charles Roberts, an investment counselor with offices at 17 East 42nd Street, New York. I originally came up to New York from Texas with a $20,000 which my friend had given to invest in the stock market. Charles Robert told me. I thought, he continued, that I knew the ropes in the stock market, but I lost every cent. True, I made a lot of profit on some deals, but I ended up by losing everything. I did not mind so much losing my own money, Mr. Robert explained, but I felt terrible about having lost my friend's money, even though they could well afford it. I degraded facing them again after our venture had turned out so unfortunately, but to my astonishment, they, they not only were a good sport about it, but proved to be an incurable optimist. I knew I had been trading on a hit or miss basis and depending largely on a luck and other people's opinion. As I Philippines said, I had been playing the stock market by ear. I began to think over my mistake, and I determined that before I went back into a market again, I would try to find out what it was all about. So I sought out and become acquainted with one of the most successful speculator speculator who ever lived, Bhutan S. Castle. I believe I could learn a great deal from him because he had long enjoyed the reputation of being successful year after year, and I knew that such a career was not a result of mere chance or luck. He asked me a few questions about how I had traded before and then told me what I believe is most important principle in trading. He said, I put a stop loss order on every market commitment I make. If I buy a stock at say $50 a share, I immediately place a stop loss order on it at 45. That means that when and if the stock should decline as much as 5 points below its cost, it would be sold automatically, thereby limiting the loss to 5 points. If your commitments are intelligently made in the first first place, the older master continued, your profit will average 10, 25, or even 50 points. Consequently, by limiting your loss to 5 points, you can be wrong more than a half of the time and still make up plenty of money. I adopted that principle immediately and have used it ever since. It has saved my client and me many thousand of dollars. After a while, I realized that stop-loss principle could be used in other ways. Besides in the stock market, I began to place a stop-loss order in any and every kind of annoyance and resentment that came to me. It has worked like magic. For example, I often have a luncheon date with a friend who is rarely on a time. In the old days, he used to keep me staying around a half my lunch hour before he showed up. Finally, he told him, Sorry. Finally, I told him about my stop loss order in my origin. I said, Bill, my stop loss order on waiting for you is exactly 10 minutes. If you arrive more than a 10 minutes late or launch on a engagement will be sold down to river and I will be gone. River and I will be gone. Man alive, how I wish I had had the sense year ago to put stop loss order on my impatience, on my temper, on my desire for self-justification, on my regret, and on all my mental and emotional strength. Why didn't I have to hurt sense to seize up each situation that threatened to destroy my peace of mind? Say to myself, see here, Dale Carnegie, this situation is worth just so much pushing about and no more. Why didn't? Why didn't I? However, I must give myself credit for a little sense on occasion at least, and it was a serious occasion to a crisis in my life. A crisis. Sorry. It was a serious occasion to a crisis in my life, a crisis when I stood watching my dreams and my plan for the future and the oak of every vanish into thin air. It happened like this. In my early 30s, I had decided to spend my life writing novel. I was going to be a second Frank Norris or the Jack London or the Thomas Hardy. I was so in a rest that I spent 2 years in Europe, where I would live cheaply with a dollar during the period of wild printing press money that followed. The First World War, I spent 2 years there, writing my magnus opus. I call it a blizzard. Blizzard. The title was a natural for the reception it got among publishers. I was as cold as any blizzard that ever howled across the plain of the Dakotas. When my literal, when my literacy agent, sorry, when my literary agent told me it was worthless, that I had no gift, no talent, no fiction. My heart almost stopped. I left this office in a daze. I could not have been more stunned if he had hit me across the head with a club. I was stupefied. I realized that I was standing at a crossroad of life and had to make a tremendous decision. What should I do? Which way should I turn? Keep past before I came out of this daze. At that time, I had never heard of the phrase put a stop loss order in your ori. But as I look back now, I can see that I did just that. I wrote off my 2 years of sweating over that novel for just what they were worth, a novel experiment, and went forward from there. I returned to my work of organizing and teaching adult education classes and wrote a biographies in my spare time. Biographies and non-fiction books such as the one you are reading now. Am I glad now that I made that decision? Glad? Every time I think about it now, I feel like dancing in the street of sheer joy. I can honestly say that I have never spent a day or an hour since lamenting the fact that I am not another Thomas Hardy. One night a century ago, when a sparrow was screeching in the old wood along the shore of Walden Pond, Henry Thoreau dipped his goose quill into the homemade ink and wrote in his diary, "The cost of the thing in the amount of what I call life, which is required to be exchanged for it immediately or in the long run." To put it another way, We are fool when we overpay for a thing in terms of what it takes out of our very existence.